Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, peace be upon you all. Today I invite you to reflect on a profound and often controversial claim. Jesus never died. For centuries, the crucifixion has stood at the center of Christian theology. Yet, there is a powerful argument, theological, historical, and spiritual, that challenges this narrative. According to Islamic belief and growing interest from alternative scholars, Jesus, the Messiah, was neither killed nor crucified. This message, grounded in faith and reason, deserves deep thought and respectful examination. The foundation of the belief that Jesus never died rests firmly within the Qur'an, particularly in Surah Nisa chapter 4, verses 157-158. These verses categorically state, "They did not kill him, nor did they crucify him, but it was made to appear so to them." This statement stands as a direct refutation of the crucifixion narrative found in Christian theology. For Muslims, this verse is not open to symbolic interpretation. It is taken as a literal divine declaration. It asserts that although the people believed they had crucified Jesus, in reality, what they witnessed was a deception or a mistaken identity orchestrated by the will of God. This is not merely a rejection of an event. It is a profound theological stance that shapes the entire Islamic understanding of Jesus, known as Isa in Arabic, as a living, protected prophet of God. What makes this verse particularly compelling is its emphatic tone and its clarity. It does not say perhaps he wasn't killed or there is doubt, but instead speaks with absolute certainty. The Qur'anic narrative aims to correct what it identifies as a historical misbelief, that Jesus was crucified and died at the hands of his enemies. This is followed by another key statement in the verse. They have no knowledge of it except the pursuit of conjecture. Here, the Quran suggests that much of the belief in Jesus' death was based not on direct knowledge or truth, but on assumptions and inherited traditions, passed down through generations without divine confirmation. In this way, the Quran seeks to redirect followers of previous scriptures towards a corrected understanding of a momentous event. Furthermore, the verse emphasizes that Jesus was raised up by God, which is central to the Islamic narrative. The act of God raising Jesus' body and soul is a symbol of divine protection and favor. It represents a turning point where the enemies of Jesus believed they had triumphed, but in reality they had failed. The Quranic message here is not simply about physical survival. It is about God's active role in preserving the honor, mission, and life of his messenger. In Islamic theology, prophets are not abandoned in their darkest hour. Instead, they are supported by the unseen hand of divine intervention. This verse reinforces the notion that God would never allow a chosen prophet like Jesus to be defeated, humiliated, or executed by disbelievers. This declaration also serves a broader theological purpose. It challenges the very foundation of doctrines built around the crucifixion, such as atonement and original sin, and invites believers to re-examine the life and mission of Jesus in light of divine truth rather than inherited doctrine. The Quranic statement is not meant to demean others' beliefs, but to offer an alternative revelation from the Creator, calling for reflection, comparison, and sincere investigation. It encourages both Muslims and people of other faiths to seek clarity and understanding through divine scripture and rational inquiry. Through this verse, the Quran not only reshapes our perception of Jesus' end on earth, it re-establishes his ongoing spiritual relevance and prophetic Dignity. The concept that the crucifixion was merely an illusion or a case of mistaken identity is one of the most intriguing aspects of the Islamic perspective on Jesus. The Qur'an explicitly states that it was made to appear to the people that Jesus was crucified. This raises a profound theological and philosophical point. What people perceive is not always the ultimate truth, especially in matters influenced by divine will. According to many Islamic scholars, God caused someone else to resemble Jesus, and it was this substitute who was crucified. The identities proposed vary. Some suggest Judas Iscariot, others a Roman soldier, or even a volunteer among Jesus' followers. But the consensus remains that it was not Jesus himself. The entire event was divinely orchestrated to protect Jesus and to test the sincerity of those who claim to follow him. This explanation speaks to the Islamic view of God's active intervention in protecting his prophets. Throughout the Qur'an, God consistently intervenes to safeguard his messengers from destruction by their enemies. Noah was saved from the flood, Moses was protected from Pharaoh's tyranny, and Abraham was rescued from the fire. In the same divine tradition, Jesus was not abandoned to a humiliating death. Instead, he was shielded from harm. To the people watching the crucifixion, it looked like Jesus had been captured and killed. But this was merely a perception, not the divine reality. This distinction between perception and truth is a recurring theme in Islamic theology, teaching believers that God alone knows the unseen and that humans should not rely solely on what appears to be true. The theory of mistaken identity also answers a number of historical and textual inconsistencies that exist within the crucifixion accounts. In the four canonical Gospels of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the descriptions of Jesus' arrest, trial, and crucifixion differ in several details. Who carried the cross? What did Jesus say on the cross? Who witnessed the event? These inconsistencies have led some scholars to question the historical accuracy of the event itself. From an Islamic viewpoint, these variations support the idea that even the earliest followers of Jesus were not completely certain of what happened, thus reinforcing the Quranic claim that people were following conjecture, not absolute knowledge. The illusion was convincing, but it did not reflect the actual truth of what took place. Additionally, this viewpoint challenges traditional Christian theology, which centers the death and resurrection of Jesus as a foundational belief. By asserting that Jesus never actually died, Islam rejects the crucifixion as a redemptive act, instead presenting Jesus as a living prophet who was spared such a fate. This changes the theological landscape drastically. Instead of viewing Jesus as a divine sacrifice, Islam honors him as a righteous and faithful messenger who will return to fulfill his mission. The concept that someone else was made to resemble Jesus and was crucified in his place preserves both the divine justice of God and the noble status of Jesus. It also invites interfaith reflection on how divine truth can be misunderstood when based on surface-level perception rather than divinely revealed insight. One of the most significant elements of the Islamic narrative concerning Jesus is the belief that he was not only saved from death but was raised alive to God. This event, known in Arabic as Rafa'ahu ala ilayhi, carries both spiritual and physical connotations. Unlike the common Christian view that Jesus died and was resurrected, Islam teaches that Jesus was taken up bodily into the heavens without ever tasting death. This elevation was not symbolic or metaphorical. It was a real divine act that removed Jesus from the reach of his enemies. The Qur'an affirms this in the verse, "Rather, Allah raised him to himself, and Allah is ever exalted in might and wise." Surah An-Nisa 4:15-8. This verse is not only a declaration of Jesus' survival, but a celebration of God's power to protect and honor his chosen one. The act of raising Jesus alive into the heavens is deeply tied to the Islamic understanding of divine justice and prophecy. Prophets in Islam are protected from disgraceful ends, particularly when they have fulfilled their mission with sincerity and righteousness. Jesus, known as Isa in Arabic, was one of the most beloved prophets, born miraculously, gifted with wisdom and supported with miracles from a young age. To allow such a noble servant to be executed by disbelievers would contradict the dignity that God bestows upon his messengers. By raising him, God demonstrated his ultimate authority, overturning the plans of the enemies and preserving the integrity of Jesus' life and mission. This also affirmed Jesus' elevated. The belief in Jesus' ascension also carries eschatological significance. Islamic tradition holds that Jesus is alive and will return before the day of judgment. His second coming will not be as a new prophet, but as a sign of the final hour, coming to restore justice, break falsehood, and unite people under the truth. This return is only possible if he never died in the first place. And his being raised alive makes that return possible and meaningful. It confirms the idea that Jesus' life did not end in tragedy, but is still unfolding according to divine decree. His absence from earth is temporary, a phase in a divinely orchestrated timeline that will culminate in his reappearance, not as a victim, but as a vindicated and victorious figure. Moreover, the concept of being raised alive reinforces the broader Islamic view of life beyond the material world. While death is the norm for human beings, God, in his wisdom, has made exceptions for certain individuals. The prophet Enoch, is also believed to have been raised up, as mentioned in the Qur'an. Jesus joins this exclusive category, indicating that his mission is not yet complete and his story not yet finished. His ascension is a testament to God's unique plan for each of his messengers. It challenges the human tendency to limit understanding to earthly events, encouraging believers to see history through the lens of divine will. Jesus' elevation is therefore not just about protection, it is about purpose, continuity, and the certainty that God's plan is always in motion. One of the most intriguing aspects when studying the crucifixion of Jesus from a historical perspective is the inconsistency among eyewitness accounts and scriptural testimonies. The four canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, provide narratives of Jesus' arrest, trial, and crucifixion, but these narratives differ significantly in detail. For instance, the identity of the person who carried the cross, the exact words Jesus allegedly spoke while on the cross, the timing of the events, and the responses of witnesses all vary from one gospel to another. From the Islamic perspective, such inconsistencies strengthen the view that the crucifixion was not a confirmed, universally witnessed reality, but rather an event clouded in confusion and assumptions. The Qur'an addresses this very issue by stating that the people who claim Jesus was crucified are actually following conjecture and guesswork not certainty. Narratives may unanimously confirm Jesus' crucifixion. Over time, narratives may have been shaped by emotions, not surprisings, not excuses, but object. The Quran emphasizes that they did not kill him with certainty, implying that the truth behind the event was never fully known, even to those who were present. This opens the possibility that a different person was crucified and the crowd mistook him for Jesus. A possibility that aligns with the Islamic explanation that God made someone else resemble him.
Stop sama laba-laba.
Beyond the canonical Gospels, apocryphal and non-canonical texts offer alternative views that challenge the traditional crucifixion story. One of the most cited is the Gospel of Barnabas, a text excluded from mainstream Christian doctrine, which explicitly states that Jesus was not crucified, but Judas Iscariot was made to look like him and was executed in his place. Though not accepted as authoritative by Christian institutions, such writings show that early sects and communities existed that rejected the crucifixion narrative, supporting the idea that it was never universally agreed upon. Other Gnostic writings, such as the Gospel of Thomas and Gospel of Peter, also present fragmented or mystical versions of the crucifixion, further adding to the lack of consensus. Until some proofs they accosted, the alternative sources are important understandings of what truly happened. The absence of a single, consistent, and universally accepted eyewitness account also highlights a deeper philosophical question. Can historical truth be established solely by fragmented testimonies, especially in an age without recording devices, legal documentation, or reliable media? The Qur'an's narrative offers an alternative that doesn't rely on conflicting human memories, but rather on divine revelation as the ultimate source of truth. It urges believers to seek knowledge beyond inherited tradition and to be cautious in accepting stories that come with doubt and contradiction. The lack of eyewitness agreement about Jesus' crucifixion is not just a technical flaw in historical records. It is, in the Islamic view, evidence of divine concealment, a sign that what was believed by many was not what truly occurred. This serves as a call to seek knowledge grounded in divine guidance rather than human speculation. One of the most compelling reasons supporting the belief that Jesus never died is the understanding that his prophetic mission remains unfinished. Unlike many prophets whose lives ended with their earthly missions concluded, Jesus' story is seen as ongoing in Islamic theology. This is grounded in the conviction that God's messengers are sent with specific tasks and timelines. Since Jesus was raised alive rather than killed, it logically follows that his purpose on earth was not yet complete. This notion stands in contrast to the Christian narrative, which holds that Jesus' death was the ultimate sacrifice to redeem humanity. In Islam, Jesus is a revered prophet whose work continues, poised to return to fulfill the divine plan fully. The unfinished nature of Jesus' mission is closely linked with Islamic eschatology, the study of the end times. It signals that Jesus' role transcends his initial ministry and extends into the final chapters of human history. His return underscores the belief that the crucifixion did not end his life or his purpose, but rather delayed the completion of his mission until a divinely appointed time. This belief also reshapes how followers view the nature of Jesus' prophethood. Rather than being a figure who suffered defeat and death, Jesus is seen as an enduring symbol of truth and perseverance. He is alive, protected by God, and empowered to return to fulfill his role as a just leader and guide. His mission involves not only spiritual guidance, but also active involvement in re-establishing justice on earth. The concept that Jesus' mission is unfinished challenges people to reconsider their understanding of history and theology, encouraging them to look beyond death as the final conclusion and instead embrace a narrative of continuity and divine purpose. Furthermore, the idea of an unfinished mission emphasizes the importance of faith in divine timing and wisdom. It invites believers to trust that God's plan unfolds in ways that humans may not immediately comprehend. The delay in Jesus' return is not a sign of failure, but a part of a greater cosmic design, where every event has its ordained moment. This perspective encourages patience, hope, and vigilance, reminding followers that the ultimate triumph of truth and justice depends on divine decree. In this way, the unfinished mission of Jesus is a powerful source of inspiration and anticipation for millions around the world. The theological significance of the belief that Jesus never died is profound and multifaceted, especially when viewed through the lens of divine justice and the nature of God's relationship with his prophets. In Islam, prophets are considered exemplary human beings, chosen by God to convey his message and guide humanity toward righteousness. The idea that a prophet as noble and beloved as Jesus would be subjected to a humiliating death by crucifixion contradicts the notion of God's justice and mercy. Instead, the belief that Jesus was spared from death and raised alive upholds the principle that God protects his chosen messengers from ultimate disgrace and defeat. This theological stance reinforces the dignity and honor bestowed upon Jesus by God, affirming his elevated status among the prophets. Moreover, this belief reflects on the concept of divine wisdom in the unfolding of historical events. If Jesus had died on the cross, it might imply that God allowed his messenger to be overcome by the forces of evil, which would challenge the understanding of God as all-powerful and just. Instead, the Islamic perspective presents a scenario where God's plan transcends human actions, ensuring that no prophet is left vulnerable to ultimate harm. The raising of Jesus serves as a manifestation of God's supreme authority and control over the course of history. It also highlights that God's wisdom often operates beyond human comprehension, protecting the integrity of his divine mission even when circumstances appear adverse. Islam implications extend to how salvation and redemption are understood. Unlike Christian doctrine, which often emphasizes Jesus' death and resurrection as the means for humanity's salvation, Islam teaches that salvation is attained through submission to God's will, righteous deeds, and faith. The fact that Jesus never died challenges the foundation of substitutionary atonement and shifts the focus toward personal accountability and divine mercy. It also preserves the Muslim monotheistic purity by maintaining Jesus as a human prophet, not a divine sacrifice. This distinction shapes the Muslim understanding of God's justice as perfect and unblemished, where no innocent prophet suffers an unjust death for the sins of others. Finally, the theological significance of Jesus never dying also fosters a sense of hope and continuity for believers. It emphasizes that the divine mission is ongoing and that God's promises will be fulfilled in their due time. Jesus' protection and survival serve as symbols of God's unwavering support for truth and justice, providing spiritual encouragement to those who face oppression or hardship. This belief also encourages interfaith respect by presenting Jesus as a figure honored not only in Christianity, but also deeply revered in Islam. His preserved dignity reflects God's mercy and the enduring relevance of his prophets, reminding believers that divine justice ultimately prevails over human injustice. The belief that Jesus never died presents a powerful call for interfaith reflection and dialogue among the world's major religious traditions, especially Islam and Christianity. At its core, this perspective invites people of different faiths to engage with each other not in conflict, but in mutual understanding and respect. Instead of viewing this theological difference as a point of division, it can serve as an opportunity to explore the deeper spiritual truths that unite believers across religious boundaries. The message encourages followers to move beyond surface disagreements and to seek common ground. In the reverence shared, interfaith reflection prompted by this belief also challenges individuals and communities to question inherited assumptions and to be open to alternative narratives supported by scripture and reason. For Christians, the traditional narrative of Jesus' death and resurrection forms the foundation of faith. Yet, it is worth examining how this intersects with other faith perspectives, like that of Islam, which presents a different but deeply meaningful understanding of Jesus' faith. Engaging sincerely with these differences can lead to greater religious literacy and reduce misunderstandings or prejudices. It encourages believers to embrace humility in theological matters, recognizing that divine mysteries may transcend human comprehension and that multiple interpretations can coexist without negating the value of each tradition. Moreover, this call for dialogue urges the creation of spaces for respectful conversation where people can share their beliefs and experiences openly. Such dialogues can foster empathy and build bridges between communities historically separated by doctrinal disputes. When believers from different faiths listen carefully to one another's views on Jesus and other sacred figures, they cultivate an environment of peace and cooperation. This is especially vital in a world marked by religious conflicts and tensions. The shared reverence for Jesus as a prophet who was honored and protected by God offers a unifying narrative that can inspire collaboration for social justice, humanitarian efforts, and ethical values common across faiths. Finally, interfaith reflection, rooted in this belief, promotes a deeper quest for spiritual truth, beyond labels and dogmas. It invites individuals to explore their own faith with sincerity, while respecting the paths of others. By recognizing that Jesus' story is told differently across religions, believers are encouraged to appreciate the diversity within religious history and thought. This approach nurtures intellectual openness and spiritual growth, helping people to transcend sectarian boundaries and focus on the universal values that religions teach: compassion, justice, mercy, and faithfulness to God. In this way, the conviction that Jesus never died becomes not a source of conflict but a catalyst for greater harmony and shared understanding among humanity. To conclude, the belief that Jesus never died invites us to reconsider long-held assumptions and opens the door to a richer, more nuanced understanding of one of history's most influential figures. It challenges us to look beyond surface narratives and to appreciate the depth and diversity of spiritual traditions. More importantly, it encourages respect, dialogue, and unity among people of different faiths, reminding us that the pursuit of truth is a shared journey. By embracing this perspective with an open heart and mind, we can foster greater harmony, deepen our faith, and honor the enduring legacy of Jesus as a messenger of peace and hope for all humanity.